thank you so much for joining us. And we create a program with it. And the majority of the program is the CEO giving those updates. And then we open it up for Q&A, as opposed to when it was just a phone call. It was more just like a talking head talking at you on the phone. But we've really moved that into the realm of it feels like an actual event, even though there's no fundraising around it.
There. I forgot my second question. I'll ask it later if I remember.
Jen had a good question. Do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Oh, sure. I hate that I'm not on video, but my camera keeps freezing. But I was just curious, a lot of times these events are networking and people catching up that they haven't seen in a long time, and there's all that sort of chit chat that happens before and after and in between the meal being served and that sort of thing. So how do you navigate sort of that guest engagement and interaction between each other without like being at a hot mess and everyone talking at once and that sort of thing?
And I'm going to encourage Caitlin to also speak up on this, and Tyler and Jacob, because I know, Caitlin, you've had some experience with this as well. I'll briefly touch on what we do. Like I said, one of the things that we've done with our larger events is this gallery view that everybody is seeing is something that we offer. So we will take 2 minutes in the beginning and say, okay, we're going to bring everybody on video and we're going to take everybody off of mute. Please take a few moments to say hello to your friends. And we act like it's them congregating in the convention center. So we give them a couple of minutes to do that. And then I come on and I'll say, okay, everybody, it's now time to settle down and start moving into the convention center. So we're going to start muting everyone and turning your videos off. And we have someone on the back end doing that work. So that was, when we first did that, that was the highest feedback, the most positive feedback that we received, is people were very excited to be able to see their friends, even if it was only for a minute or two. And again, we had 125 people registered, computers registered. So it was a lot of people on screen at once. It was very chaotic, but we've continued to do that because the feedback was so positive from people. And then the other thing, Jen, I mentioned this before, is we always try to have some type of interactive poll where we can say to our audience, okay, members, in just a few moments, we're going to put a question up on the screen. So if they're not really paying attention to what we're saying, it's going to bring them out of that and make them look at what's actually happening. And then they see the questions pop up on their screen and they can click through whatever their answer is. Generally, it's what topics do you want to hear about? And we'll pick the top 3, or what questions do you want answered? And we'll pick the top 3. And we're prepared to answer all 5 because we don't know what the top 3 are going to be, but we never put anything in the survey that is going to throw us for a loop. So we don't do like, chat us your questions. We generally present the questions in survey form and let our audience pick the top 3 that they want to hear about.
That's awesome. Caitlin and Tyler, do y'all want to chime in?
Our event was framed a little differently. So before I just kind of get into the general, I actually feel like Tyler might be able to, Tyler's more live streaming focused, so he might have some real relevant experience to this particular question.
For sure. So, pre-pandemic, we worked with several nonprofits in the area, and, like we also volunteer and work at our local church. And so like everybody, when the pandemic hit, we were like, what are we going to do for services? So we had to scramble and figure out how to start live streaming our church services. And then after that, kind of the first initial month of March and April, we all remember that, we got in touch with some of our local nonprofit partners like Brigade and United Way, and they all had these events coming up, and they were scrambling to figure out how they could still have them. And so we kind of took a little bit of a different approach than Lee, as opposed to like a Zoom online thing. We more took our video expertise and did like pre-recorded, pre-produced kind of live stream events that also incorporated an element of live. So we worked with the nonprofit, like with Brigade was our first one we did. I think it was last May or June.
Yeah.
And we kind of came up with a run sheet of what the night would have had. and we put all those things together in a pre-recorded format, and then they went live beforehand to introduce the event. And then we live streamed it similar to like we would like our church service. You know, it went to their website. There's chat enabled so people can talk and interact with each other while the live stream's going. And then we also streamed it to Facebook. And since then, we've helped several other nonprofit partners in the local Cape Fear area do similar events.
Yeah, and to pick up off of what Tyler was just saying, I think, Lee, this is something that you said that was really intriguing for us to hear, how you guys kept the live feel, still doing it on Zoom, which is amazing. That's difficult to do. So I think that speaks to the team that you guys have to be able to pull that off. Because one of the things that works really well, and one of the reasons why we encourage nonprofits to do as much pre-recording as possible, is because live's hard. I mean, we all know when it goes live, there's just a pressure that happens, and you may have this amazing thing to say, and you find that you're struggling to articulate it, or you had this, for instance, with Brigade, they have kids doing performances and stuff, but with COVID, it was how could we do these performances? How can we get all of these things together? So kind of what we did is, and what we have done, we're actually working on our 6th stream right now with Dreams, but is figure out, okay, how do we tell the story that you guys want to tell, or that the nonprofit wants to tell, and do it in a way that is visually engaging, but also that makes it feel live. So just like you guys were doing as a pre-recorded one, our goal is for people to not realize that it's pre-recorded. Like when people comment and they're like, oh, that was amazing, such a great live event, and they actually think it was live, we're like, yes, we tricked them. They thought it was live, because we want people to really feel engaged. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been asked before, why don't we just produce a video and post it on YouTube or post it on our Facebook page? And when you're not going live and people aren't getting a notification or having something to be invited to, it just gives them less reason to watch it. So I think anything you can do, I love what you guys were saying about engaging the audience. Those were great ideas, the poll questions, but having questions that you already know the answers to, so you're not blindsided. That's all really, really good stuff. And I think anything that you can do to engage the audience is just really helpful, because we've all been living in this Zoom world for a year and a half now. Everybody's a little bit tired of it. Usually when you get in groups like this, honestly, at least in our experience, people don't want to talk. They have their mic muted. But anything you can do to get people to engage, to get people to use chat features, to get them brought in, is really effective.
Yeah, Jacob and Tyler, what you're talking about right now, you're kind of answering Sarah's question, or at least part of Sarah's question, about live versus pre-recorded. Sarah, do you want to come off mute and ask about the chat box?
Yeah, I was curious what platform you guys were using. I'm with the YMCA, by the way. I'm new to the group, so thanks for having me, everyone. We've done all pre-recorded videos, because once I got into live, it was a whole nother can of worms that I wasn't as familiar with, but we want to make it more engaging, and a lot of our board members have said we got to have a chat box or something. So I'm curious what platform you guys have used to have a chat box. That's kind of my next venture, is figuring out how we can incorporate that with the pre-recorded event.
Yeah,
we use a software called Livestream, and it has a chat feature and also has a donate feature.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do think, Lee, you might be a good person to answer this question, because for us, we do a pretty complicated setup. So we run live stream because it enables us to literally, we have a studio here, we'll run 3 cameras, we have a camera switcher, a teleprompter. So we, when we do an actual live event like that, we'll have camera operators. We're doing a lot to make it kind of like a full-on production, but you don't have to have all of those things to use a chat feature to go live. And I think that those are features that Zoom and maybe what you guys use could speak into that as well.
Yeah, we did Zoom, Sarah, but we kept it as a Zoom meeting. We didn't do it as a Zoom webinar, because when you do it as a Zoom webinar, you can't share other people's cameras, and chat features not enabled, and it doesn't give the people participating as much gadgets as Zoom meeting. So this is a Zoom meeting. and it's just this way. But we did have people on the back end who were closing down, like turning off people's cameras and muting them. So we weren't asking the guests to do that because we knew not all of our guests were that savvy, particularly the first 3 weeks of Zooming.
And was your event live or was it pre-recorded and you streamed it on Zoom?
Our entire event, all of our events are live.
Okay.
And we did have a pre-recorded speaker. She was in New York. She had sent a cell phone video of her giving her speech. It was 11 minutes. That was the only, and we had a pre-recorded video that was almost like a promo video, but those were the only 2 pre-recorded things that were tacked in with the live event. So we would be live and say, now we're going to watch a video. And our events person on the background would be hitting all the buttons and showing the video. So.
Yeah. And Sarah, there are a couple of programs like we use Livestream Studio. It costs about $1,000 a year for a membership of it. And to do we do a lot with it, but you don't have to. You can just pre-record a video, produce it, put it into the Livestream Studio, and then say, I want to go live at this time. And it will run the event like it's live. It'll push it to Facebook. It will, push it to an embed on your website that says, we're live. So you don't have to have all the other bells and whistles to still pull off a live event. And then there's also a program called OBS, and it is a free software that allows you to go live. I think it's particularly good for doing like Facebook and possibly an embed, but I haven't used it personally, so I don't know how much or how good it is, but I do know it's a free version of a similar software.
Awesome. Someone else have a question?
I was just gonna chime in. Did anybody else attend the Bestival, Encore Magazine's Bestival Festival when it had to go virtual? I don't know. Stacy, did you go? I know you guys were up for nonprofit too. They had a really good engaging chat platform. I didn't want to click around too much while I was on live, but I'll find what that platform was and send it to David to send out to the group, because that was one where it was like very chat focused, and they did a mix of live and pre-recorded, and it actually went off pretty well without a hitch. So I'll try to find that platform too.
Also, I think Linnea, you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Not anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, not to shift gears entirely, but one of the things that came up when we were talking as a small group, and I'm kind of throwing it to Caitlin at this point, is that we're all come from very different nonprofits in a lot of ways, and depending on your mission delivery, a virtual event might not just be this interface. So with that, Caitlin, will you tell us about what Nourish did?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, David. Yeah, so this is actually the second panel I've sat on about virtual events, and I think it's really cool to see how all of our nonprofit community has done such different, unique takes and perspectives about what they're still continuing to have their event as. So at Nourish, we typically try to only have one event a year. It's our annual gala. It's usually about 400 people, and it's usually in September. So we had the advantage, unlikely, that we did have a little bit of time to kind of see what was happening, see what was trending, and then make the call early to be able to switch to a virtual format. But ours, and truthfully, this is not a knock on anybody else, but to I think it was Stephanie's question, we were already concerned about like Zoom fatigue, and we didn't want to do another like virtual event where everybody had to log on at the same time. We just didn't expect that, come that time, 6 months in, that I think was when everybody was really kind of hitting a pinnacle of like, not another Zoom. So we had the added advantage of the time to be able to shift, and we have had a strong partnership with True Blue Butcher and Table. They had catered our gala the last 2 years. And so we really kind of threw it back to them, and they were already experimenting with the idea of doing a DIY dinner kit. And so we shifted to the idea of doing a gala to go. We wanted our gala, we wanted our event to still include all of the components that you think of with a normal gala, and that's food, drink, entertainment, and auction and an ask. And so we were able to incorporate all of those elements, but we had already been providing the kids on our backpack program their food assistance through a drive-through service model. And so we were able to take that same idea and then just transition that to basically doing a drive-through for people to pick up their dinner kit and then be able to enjoy it at any point during that weekend. So I'm not to say that we were the first by any means, but I think that was one of the early options to just enjoy yourself throughout the weekend. So we did have a set time on Friday afternoon that they had to come pick up their dinner kits, but then we just encouraged them to enjoy them at any point throughout that year. And by the way, we did end up pushing it back a month. So this actually ended up happening mid-October. So in terms of kind of what we experienced and what we learned, you know, even at that point, we had talked to a couple technology companies about setting up a platform to do the ordering. And it just seemed like they were still really new at that point too. And there was just gonna, you know, we would be trading one set of issues for another. So we ended up making the decision to just make our own order form. Hindsight's 2020, that was a little bit of a mistake for us because we did end up sort of sacrificing functionality for design. So, you know, it looked pretty, but then that basically meant that I had to type in every order. It did lend some room for error in terms of typos, or you took a picture and it cut half the order form off, which of course, looking back, that was a lot of time spent on that. We also did, because of this format, have to have our final orders in a week before the event, which I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir when I say that some of that last minute hype is what ends up really pushing the event. And that was something that we did sort of reflect on in hindsight, that you know, having to tell people you have to order a week beforehand potentially lost some of those last minute hype sales for the event. But in terms of ways that we were able to make this fun and still engaging, we did have the huge cool thing for us is that the Cape Fear Craft Beer Alliance, 12 breweries came together and made 3 beers for us. So we were able to have a completely exclusive 4-pack of beers that was part of the order form. So that was super cool. And then that got us a lot of like press and hype just from the brewery side, you know, because then of course the breweries ended up talking about the beers in the event, and that was really neat. We did also have some like perks in terms of early orders, or so the way the order form was set up, you could do a dinner kit for 2 or a dinner kit for 8. The idea of like hosting a party, table hosting almost, but and so like if you did an 8, you could get an extra bunt cake. The Nothing Bunt Cakes came on as a dessert sponsor. You know, we gave away extra bottles of wine, things like that. And then we did at the actual drive-through hire a photographer, and I had this like last minute brain idea of trying to, like, we were going to miss our step and repeat photos of everybody coming to the event. And so I brainchild a drive-through step and repeat. So we literally got like balloon towers and decorated the windows of the building. And then as people drove in to go to the drive-through, we stopped them in their cars and took a picture of them masked up and whatever. So, you know, again, in terms of thinking both from the customer side, but also from what we would be missing from not having that event, that was something where I was like, I need my pictures. We did also have, you know, we talk about entertainment, something that you get when you're there. We usually have a live band at the event. So I talked with Active DJ Entertainment, one of the local DJ companies here, and they made downloadable playlists. And so they basically made like 3 playlists, like a cocktail hour, a dinner mix, and then like turn up the beats kind of thing. And then they also were willing to actually be at the drive-through, and they were DJing at the drive-through. So again, just another opportunity to kind of like try to make this fun if possible. And then of course we had you know, a swag bag from our sponsors, and cooking tips from True Blue, Butcher and Table, great, you know, little videos, and also little informational cards, recipes for all of the items in the dinner boxes. And then in terms of those other elements, we did switch to an online auction. It was fabulous. That's something that we think we'll continue to do even if we do move back to live events, because we were able to open the auction a week beforehand. And then of course the momentum really bumped up that weekend as the event was going on. We did just make a page on our website and make a button through our online store in terms of donations. And then we already had a platform set up for how we communicate with our families via texting. So then we were able to do text blasts throughout the weekend, and also email blasts throughout the weekend. And then in terms of our ask, we just pre-recorded some videos in terms of, you know, help us feed our kids, and sent that out a couple times throughout the weekend and had that available on the website. But again, Lee already kind of mentioned it early and touched on it. There are a lot of components of the virtual event that I think we'll never go back away from. We do sort of cherish the idea of our in-person events. And but in terms of the putting the ask online, putting the auction online, I mentioned it in our pre-meeting that even like my parents who live in Atlanta were able to bid on items knowing I know someone who lives in the Wilmington area that I could purchase an item for or win an item for. So, you know, I think that there's definitely some advantages to both of those being available to the public, regardless of whether you are attending the event. And really, in the end, our ROI was still good and comparable compared to our in-person events. And so, you know, of course, our overhead was different. We have the advantage that in past years, a lot of our items, our food, alcohol, everything is donated. And we didn't feel like that was right this year. We wanted to pay, knowing how so many of our small businesses had struggled over the spring and summer. And so, you know, all things considered, we didn't pay for a building. We didn't, you know, pay for other aspects that we normally would have. So our ROI still turned out great.
Hey, Caitlin,
Yeah.
can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say that's it.
Yeah, a couple of good questions. One real specific to what you were talking about from Anne in the chat. Anne, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, Caitlin. So how did you handle selling the alcohol online? Did you have to obtain a special use ABC permit? Because we're looking at doing something similar to that.
Yeah, so Anne, I would imagine this has changed. We had already applied for the permit for when we were supposed to be having an in-person event in September. I did get in touch with Raleigh ABC, and they said we did have to reapply, even though we weren't technically serving alcohol at our event. They were driving away with sealed purchases or packages of alcohol. We did still have to reapply for the date that we were handing it out. And then we were not at the time allowed to include liquor. So originally we typically have a liquor sponsor and we do a specialty cocktail. And originally we had explored the idea of doing like a specialty cocktail to go kit. And at the time they told us we were not allowed to do that. I would imagine they may have relaxed that now as more time has gone on, because I think that was them just kind of still not knowing what to do with virtual events and what the rules would be around that. So.
Okay.
Thanks for that information.
Mm-hmm.
Another broader question Jen had, trying to scroll up to it.
I can jump up and ask David.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just curious. So we're a Wilmington-based nonprofit, but we serve veterans throughout the U.S. Our clients are around the U.S. Our constituents are. So I was just curious if anybody on here, I know like Caitlin's model is much more local centric. You're driving to True Blue, you're getting this and all of that, but has anyone done something more broad? Have you had to deal with time zones, that sort of thing? I wasn't sure if Ancient Arbor had done anything like that, but just sort of what your experiences were around navigating all of that.
Jen, our national office, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, is going to be doing a national virtual event. I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know if they're gonna.
Can we co-sponsor that? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if they're going to do pre-recording, right? A lot of what Tyler and Jacob talked about. So then you can just live stream it at any time and people can watch it based on where they are. But I do know that they are partnering with different affiliates across the nation to have them host it at the same time as them. But that's not very helpful, but I know that it's being done. So if I can get any information for you, Jen, I will.
Yeah, that would be great. We're talking about doing something in September, and I can imagine, I have a vision of, sort of releasing live videos at noon on going through across the time zones, but having that come together is also a whole different ball game of what your vision might be.
Most of the live streams we've done have been local. We did do one for a national nonprofit called The Life of a Single Mom. They just help single moms throughout the United States. And I think theirs was a luncheon, but they didn't really worry about time zones. I think they went live at like 12:30 Central Time. So that was really the only experience we've had with more of a national kind of event. And it wasn't really something they worried about.
Yeah, I think depending on your event, just picking a time that kind of will work across the different time zones that you will be affecting. I mean, if you wanted to do some sort of a targeted, time thing, there probably would be a way to do that, but that would get a little bit complicated, I would imagine, in trying to segment your audience to those particular time zones so that your audience isn't getting hit with the same thing over, 3-hour time or whatever that would look like.
Jen, one little cautionary thing I'd like to add there, because we were sending text messages that I was trying to have hit like right before dinner, right before you would start grilling your burgers. And it was a lesson learned, because apparently when you get in those queues through those systems, if somebody with a huge 300,000 national message gets in front of you, you just have to wait while their giant message sends out. Now, I know that that's pretty platform specific, but it was something that I realized in hindsight, I shouldn't have tried to time it so specifically, because then people didn't end up getting the text message until like 8:30 at night, and that's not cool, so that was definitely something I learned in hindsight that I wouldn't do again, to try to send it so time specifically.
Yeah, thanks. That's great advice.
I want to quickly go back. Tyler and Jacob were talking about some of the live streaming or pre-recording and then going and talking about some of the difficulty about doing a full live event. And I just want to say some of the things that we did to prep, the best way I can describe it is we treated our event as if it were a play. So if anybody did high school theater or anything like that, we had rehearsals, and we did full rehearsals we recorded. We did rehearsals that had everybody who was participating in it. We had multiple rehearsals, and then we had 2 full dress rehearsals. And that's the best way I can describe it, high school theater. And the dress rehearsals where everyone came wearing what they were going to wear the night of the event and had their hair and makeup, how they were going to have it the night of the event, had their lighting, had everything set to go. We had all the stuff that was pre-recorded video ready to roll. And the biggest thing that we did on those rehearsal was, if there is a gaffe, if there is a mistake, if there is a technical issue, you roll with it as if it were the night of the event. And so I remember on one of our rehearsals, the video didn't start. And so we gave ourselves, we had 2 minutes to fix any technical issues before we moved on to the next segment. And so I just came on the screen and I said, sorry, folks, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Thank you so much for bearing with us. We're going to give this 2 minutes to get it fixed. So take this time, refresh your drink, give a little chat in the box. And if we can't get it up in 2 minutes, we're going to move on to the next section. And it didn't happen the night of the event, but it happened during the rehearsal. So everyone was prepared, because just like, during a play, you can't ask for your line while you're live. So you can't just go, when you're live. So we had a lot, and we still continue to do these rehearsals and run them the same way when we prep for these events.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. That is, I understand why they're successful now.
Lots of them. I'll send you a recording of ours, Tyler.
Well, this is great. I'm going to share a slide with us that has a few things that haven't come up yet that we had talked about. In the meantime, great questions, great discussion. Keep it coming. And y'all let me know if you can see this here in a second. Did everybody get that?
Yes.
Table hosting came up briefly. I'm really more curious about that. How does that work? Do you go to breakout rooms?
Sure, I can talk about that. It's going to be different this year for us than it was last year. We are still using a table host model for our event because we know the best way to get people to attend the event is to be invited by their friends. So ultimately, it's not Planned Parenthood that's doing the inviting. It's our table hosts who are inviting their friends. Last year, when we first did this, we had already had almost all the tables filled because we started out in person and we had to shift about 3 weeks out. So this year we've kept the table hosting. We've reached out to our table host and we said, will you be a virtual table host this year? Virtual table hosting this year is you still invite your friends. We provide you all the emails. So we still send out all the save the dates, all the email invitations, all the email information about the events. And we're asking those table hosts to forward those on to their friends and say, don't forget, I invited you. There's a place when you register where you can fill in who your table host is. Please put in my name. So the people getting invited are still being invited personally by their friends and neighbors and whoever else. Now, once we get into the room this year, we're not going to have that big screen, that big gallery view. Everyone that has a table is going to have, it's going to be a split screen. So up on this side will be the big program. And down here is going to be 10 people in 10, like your little 10 block of faces for the people who you've invited to sit at your table. Those people at that table, that is the only people that they will see for the whole event, other than what's happening on the presentation screen. But those 10 people can actually talk to one another, and nobody else will hear it. It will just be in that room. And they can chat with the larger group. So we can still get everybody's questions through chat. So each person has their own little table, essentially down in the corner. And you can turn your video off. You can mute people. If you don't want to hear people talking, you can turn down their volume so that you don't hear them all within that little room. And yes, Stephanie, it's being done on Zoom, but we have a company very similar to Tyler and Jacob's company who is running it for us, and they're using a slightly different platform within Zoom to make that table hosting work for that. I will get a screenshot and send it to everybody once we figure out what is happening. The company we're using is called Alchemy, and they're based out of Washington, DC. So they're not even a Raleigh company. I thought they were, but they're a Washington, DC based company. Does that answer table hosting question?
Well, and I maybe want to chime in, Lee, because we've really viewed table hosting from a different perspective, is that it doesn't involve the logged in virtual aspect, but to your point, it's just saying, hey, invite 7 people or however many people. And I also I'm part of Good Friends of Wilmington, and this is what we did for our event as well, is that it's really the idea of just appointing someone, but then providing all of the same like flexibility of however you want to do yours. Is it coffee? Is it lunch? What are you going to do with your 7 people? And we saw some really cool ideas for that with the Gala to Go, where people were still able to do safe social distance options, but all come together and cook their dinner kits and enjoy the evening. And then we just kind of ask them to then play the ask video for all of their guests. So I think that that's really kind of another vein of table hosting in a virtual world.
Isabel, you have a question? Or did that already get answered? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing to that. If you're a nonprofit, that maybe doesn't have the budget for some external company to, to have a table hosting capability, but you wanted to still do that virtually, something we've seen done is streaming to Facebook and doing watch parties through Facebook. That's a kind of a low tech way that you can do it, because you can ask someone to host a watch party. And the way those streams work is when you're in a watch party, it's kind of similar to that. The people that are watching with you, you're only going to see them in the view counter. You're only going to comment with them. So that's just another way you could do that.
And I think one thing to just keep in mind and look forward to in the future is the fact that, as we've all said, virtual is not going away. And so table hosting is going to mean something different when you are able to have in-person events again, because we're still going to be virtual. And now these table hosts bring these people with them, but we can also encourage them to not only have tables here, but also have virtual tables. Share this with your friends and family. And so in the future, hopefully soon, when we can have in-person events again, I think the reach is going to be exponentially more than pre-pandemic. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. That's been one of the coolest things we've seen in the process of nonprofits having to pivot and having to figure some of this out, is because they have. I mean, it's been a forced growth area that has enabled a lot of people to expand their reach further than they probably ever would have, which is a blessing in the midst of a difficult time, for sure.
I have a question for Tyler and Jacob. Have you guys seen any nonprofits or like, I know your church sessions probably weren't fundraising in live time, but have you seen a successful combination of live streaming with a live update of giving, like the idea of a thermometer that you could normally cast up on the screen at a live event, but then doing that virtually at the same time? Have you guys seen anyone do that successfully? Or has anyone here done that successfully?
Yeah, so we've seen it done successfully, yes. We have had a few people that wanted to do it, that then at the last minute, because of the lack of a dress rehearsal, or getting the people that were as comfortable as they needed to be live, kind of canned that idea and just did an update at the end. But that's definitely something I think that can work. It's just the ability of executing it. And I really liked Lee's point. I think sometimes it's easy for people to get caught in a virtual event of not preparing as much as they should. And a virtual event is actually harder than an in-person event. You can't just kind of show up and wing it, even as much as you probably could at an in-person one if you're someone that's a gifted speaker or something. So I think, yes, it could definitely be done. It would just take some work in the beginning to get it all set up the way you needed it to be, so that it would work really well. But we actually messed around with trying to figure out some ideas of even like on the host page of the website, having a live thermometer type look that was, updating from the CRM directly through the giving and stuff like that, which I think would be really cool.
Caitlin, we do a live thermometer. We did it when our in-person events, and we did transfer it to our virtual event. We do it through a company called Mobile Cause, and it's text to give. So people text their gift, they put their name in, and you watch the thermometer go up. So we had someone on our back end who would pull up the thermometer screen and share that. But then our person making the ask would come on screen and say, okay, everybody, we're now going to take a moment and let's see where we are on the thermometer. And we did that several times. Again, when we did our event, we made sure we didn't stay on any one person or one thing for more than 5 minutes. So it was constantly changing. So the thermometer was something that we could intersperse between speakers or use it as we were changing from one topic to the next. So, and we will continue to do that with these events as well.
I bet that was very impactful.
Yes, it was, and it's nice for people to see their name. They like seeing their name scrolled up there. And, you know, we dramatically adjusted our goals for what we wanted the goal of that thermometer to be, to make sure that we could meet it the night of the event. And we did have a challenge gift as well, where I think we had a $25,000 challenge that we were trying to meet as well. So
That's really cool, Lee. That was something we had discussed earlier, because I mean, we obviously are a company that is on the outside, you know, trying to help nonprofits, but we do have a heart for nonprofits. It's one of the reasons why we really found ourselves working with a lot of nonprofits, and just trying to figure out how, you know, in-person events historically, you know, are better at raising funds than virtual events. And so part of that may be the, for lack of a better word, kind of the pressure of being at an in-person event and everyone at the table around you is giving and feeling like, you know, you need to give or inspired. And online, people don't feel the same pressure or even maybe the same just to, like, encouraged. They're not as inspired as much to give. So trying to figure out ways to do that. And I really like that. That's interesting. I haven't thought about something to highlight the gifts as they were coming in, because, you know, we can't judge someone's motives, but we can definitely take the money to do good stuff with it. So if someone, you know, wants to see their name up there and that's something that would inspire them to give, or even just make them feel thanked for their gift, that's a really cool thing that I know we'll look into trying to figure out for the future with gifts. That's a really cool aspect.
Susan asked a question. Sorry, Dave, I'm jumping in. She's asking if we have the live thermometer running throughout the entire program. We don't. We might for this event that we're getting ready to host in May, just and maybe have it almost like scrolling at the bottom, like you would see something on CNN. But for the first event that we did, we didn't. We just kept coming back to it every couple of minutes. And then as we were making the pitch, because we had someone do an ask, their background was the thermometer scrolling as they were making the ask.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I stopped sharing, not to wrap us up right this second. I did have one more question for anybody who wants to jump in that was on the slide about, and Jacob, you'd mentioned raising more at a live event versus a virtual event. However, I think we all probably know that traditional live events are very costly, especially in terms of our time. Can any of you, and feel free to anybody else to jump in, what have you noticed in terms of cost savings now that it's online, or finance in general?
The savings is amazing. We're not paying for convention center. We're not paying for convention center food. You know, we don't have those costs. The speaker last year was able to dramatically reduce her speaking fee because she sent us an 11-minute video and we didn't have to pay to fly her from New York to North Carolina and to put her up in a hotel. So when you look at all of those things, I think a lot of speakers are reducing some of their costs that they would charge. My speaker for this year is not, but we are sharing that cost across 5 events. So we're just dividing her cost by 5, and that's going to be the fee for each different region for this year's speaker. So that has been a big thing that we've seen. And our sponsors this year jumped right in. We've met our sponsorship goal. We met it within the first couple of months of putting out the sponsorship ask. So that did not discourage anybody from not sponsoring. In fact, we even got some new sponsors this year. So that was really nice to see. And real quick, I just want to say, we don't call it, we refer to these as a virtual experience. Come join us for a virtual experience. And we want people to know that we want to keep the feel of that nighttime event. Make sure you dress up, feel free to have a drink in your hand. And all of our presenters are presenting as if they are standing at a podium. So nobody is allowed to sit behind a desk and present. We encourage everybody to stand up and present as if they were speaking to a live audience of 600 and really keep that feel the same.
Well, that's awesome. Any last thoughts, panel folks? Before I do want to talk about May the 12th, which is going to be a really great program. And but just maybe one last minute, if y'all want to have, if you have anything else to give us advice about.
I don't really, I mean, I guess I'll just say, I know that we're all creatives, and I think this has been the year of throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. So of course, if there was any aspect of what we did that anyone would have questions about, you know, I'm sure David can send our contact information out, because I'm happy to answer questions. You know, we certainly had things that worked and things that didn't. And so I'm not afraid to share our struggles and the idea that we can prevent you from having the same. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has some.
Thank you.
Yeah, we second that as well. Anybody has any questions, shoot us an email. We're happy to give you any information and any help we can on any of the stuff we've talked about. And Lee, I really want to watch this event now.
I'll send
really
it
cool.
to you.
I'm very interested in it. Please do.
We'll have a watch party.
There you go.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you guys so much for leading us today. Before we go, before everybody logs off, we've got a couple of minutes. And again, May 12th is super important. Bethany, I'm going to put you on the spot because you are here and you have experienced what we are all going to experience on May 12th. So could you just come off mute and tell us a little bit about what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm super excited that the AFP Cape Fear chapter is bringing the Racial Equity Institute to Wilmington virtually and presenting their groundwater training on May 12th. And as you guys know, we are a small chapter, but certainly committed to racial equity and inclusion and diversity. And this has been something that I've gone through in the past. It was life-changing for me personally. I know there's some people on the call who've gone through either phase 1 of the REI Institute or groundwater training. And I think it's really relevant now with all the work that we're doing. And it's important that we encourage our boards, our volunteers, our staff, and anyone who's interested. So mark your calendars for May 12th. It's a 4-hour training. The cost right now is $50 for members, $60 for non-members. We have 100 virtual seats, and it is open up to, like I said, your board members, your volunteers, other members of your staff. It doesn't just have to be members of AFP or people in the fundraising world, but great opportunity to bring this to our area. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email. But Stacy, I believe registration's open live. You can go to the website and go ahead and reserve your seat now.
Great. That's
Yeah.
exciting, Bethany.
No, I'm super stoked.
Yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
be great. It's going to be a great day. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I know
Lauren,
it's a longer meeting, and I would just encourage you all. I know that we're all busy. I know 4 hours can seem like a long time, but I promise you it will be well worth every single hour. And the discussion and the conversations will be really rich. So please take that time for yourself and encourage others.
Fantastic. Well, it's 10:01, folks. So this has been a fantastic discussion. If no one else has anything to share, or Lauren, if you want to finish us up with a comment, we'll say happy Wednesday. Try to work outside if you can and you're in Wilmington because it's gorgeous. If not, yeah, sign up for REI. It's going to be a great experience. Thanks, everybody.
Yep, just thank you guys for all being with us. And then feel free to reach out to myself or any of our board members if you have any questions or any issues with registration or any of that kind of stuff. So thank you guys, and thank you to our speakers. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Have a great day.